Okay, the second most important aspect to drawing is the ability to draw some good hands. It's very important helping communicate and tell a story. It can express a lot of emotion. It's extremely important to really understand this. Drawing hands is all about size comparisons and relationships like anything else within your designs. It's a character design within itself. So it's very important to really understand how it works. So what I've done, I'm going to try to break this down as simply as possible for you, just so that it's not as complicated, because it can become a very complicated thing if you think too hard about it. But once you understand the basic concept, hands can become very easy and fun. One of the biggest problems is in when I look at a lot of portfolios is people neglect their hands. They stick their hands in people's pockets, they stick them behind the back, they don't have them communicating an idea. So it's very important to understand the basis. What I'm drawing here is understanding the arcs in the hand. You've seen very many stylized hands where I even used them myself on Clerks the animated series where they were just really flat. But having a grasp and understanding of the arcs within the knuckles, as from the third knuckle to the second knuckle to the first knuckle within the hand, it's understanding those arcs are going to help create more life and dynamic within your drawings. So it's important to really keep that in mind. They don't go parallel. They're not straight across. The more you consider that and think about the arcs, the more believable you're going to make those hands. If you were to take the basic hand, talking about the back of the hand, and split it in half, you're going to find that that center line is going to be where the very bottom of your finger, back finger, is where the knuckle is. And notice that your index finger lines up with about the bottom of your fingernail on your middle finger. Notice that your pinky hits about the second knuckle, the first knuckle on the top of your hand where I've lined that up. So look at those comparisons, because that's what it's all about. So, and also as I'm doing this line right here, notice where your thumb lines up within a rhythmic arc, goes towards your second knuckle. So keep that in mind. As long as you understand these sort of relationships, you can start to create better drawings. Biggest problem people do, they make their thumbs either way too long or way too short. So keep that in mind as much as you can, and just keep looking at hands. There's so many magazines out there just with models and everything every day to look at. You can really get a good idea of drawing hands. And that drawing exercise, the creative drawing exercise I talked about in a previous lesson, do this with hands. Just look at hands, look at varieties, and just draw them. Fill up a page every day of just drawing hands. You'll also notice that the knuckles are equally spaced from the third knuckle. You're standing in line somewhere, when they're handing you money, when whatever it is, when you notice people's hands, try to do that as much as you can. But before you can start to really draw cartoon hands and understand them, you need to understand what the real hand looks like, and that's why I'm doing this quick exercise for you, and just to show you and break it down. Now flip your hand over and now look at the palm of your hand. If we draw a box around the palm of our hand, you'll notice that now the center line will form in between your middle finger and the side. So you'll have two fingers on each side, and just draw a line straight down. You'll notice that now that becomes the center line of your palm. Now if you're going to draw a middle line where it cuts in half, you'll notice that the palm is longer than the back of your hand. So just flip your palm over to the back of your hand and you'll be able to see that difference. So looking at this, we can see that we have a lot of padding on our hands, and it's broken down into this where I drew those circles. Underneath that is where your knuckles are, but on top of that is the padding. And in between that, you can see what we have, a hollow point within our hand, and it's surrounded by padding right around our thumb area. And that's one of the strongest points and most valuable points we have within our hand, is the use of our thumb. Notice also where the padding of the thumb lines straight in the middle. So when you're going to draw that line for your thumb, it's going to come right down through that center line. So just understanding these basic principles, you'll understand this more. Look what I'm doing now is I'm kind of drawing this arch around, almost making it seem like your hand fits in a mitten. And you've seen that used many times within just classical animation, from the early Mickey Mouse shorts and doing, Tom and Jerry and everything else. The old school 40s animation was just breaking it down into these simple shapes. Look at the arcs of the knuckles that are going on. All this is extremely important, and it's not that much to comprehend and not that much to study. So the more you do this, the better understanding you're going to get. Look where the top of your thumb sits now in relationship to your palm. Keep that in mind. So every time you're moving your hand, just see which direction and everything it goes. You got to understand too that the hand is the most movable part really within your whole body. That has just the most adjustable part, I should say, within your whole body. So just keep that in mind. That's why it tends to be difficult when people neglect it. Now the middle finger is really the most important finger within your hand. It really it measures the rest of the hand. That's what you're going to use for all the proportion. So I took this middle finger off this hand. Look what happens when you turn that to the side. It's almost equal to the width of your hand. So that's just a good general rule of thumb to understand if you're trying to figure out what the width is. Of course, once you get more cartoony, you can exaggerate and play with this and do whatever it is, that you want to do. So keep looking at all the different measurements, but really again, that middle finger is really the measuring point for the rest of your hand. So keep that in mind. Now, breaking down into further details of just the fingers and everything, you almost want to think of the tips as the fingers as they look at them, and they kind of taper into a little bit of a triangular shape. And look how that works. Sometimes it's a little flat. It depends on maybe what you do within your life, but that's the reality. It kind of tapers your bone underneath there, tapers into that shape. And then the joints of your fingers are squared off, and the shafts of your fingers are typically square too. So we're dealing with these square shapes with a sort of triangular point, and understanding the bone underneath there. So it's important to realize all that sort of stuff. You got to realize too, your picture will become weakened if your hands aren't right. So make sure you get your hands down, make sure you understand it. There's as much character within the hands as there are in the head. So keep that in mind and don't neglect this. Please draw a page a day. It's going to help you in the long run get better as a draftsman, and you're going to be able to create more convincing pictures. Now let's look at the palm of our hand, and it's interesting to note that just the little pads within our fingers on the palm of our hand appear to be all equal in distance on each finger. It's all the same size. It's very interesting. Now look at the back of your hand. As you flip your hand over, now look where your joints are from all your knuckles, your first, second, and third knuckle, and starting from the top, you're going to have a small shape, then you have a medium shape, then you have a large shape. Your fingers are extremely well designed. There is a design shape, the exact same thing we talk about in design, using small, medium, and large shapes, creating the snowman and avoiding variation is the key to really understanding, the hands. So look at that. You can use that as a design issue extremely well. So always look at these little details. They're right there in front of you. You're holding your hand in front of you, I hope, right now, and you can see all these various details. Now what I want to do is just start to break down the relationship with the hand as opposed to your face. It's important to understand what that is, because, and this is why understanding the human anatomy, understanding the body, understanding everything else is such a key element to understanding and figuring out so many other things within drawing. The more you understand this, the better understanding you're going to have of all these sort of relationships with each other. So we've already talked about the head and breaking down the head in a way. So once you understand how that works, you're going to be able to figure out how big your hand is in comparison to your face. If you were to place your hand right on top of your face right now, you will notice, put your wrist at the bottom of your chin and your middle finger is going to touch at the top of your hairline, if you have a hairline. Mine's actually receding, so it's not really there right now. But that's the reality, and that'll kind of give you an indication of the size of someone's head and hands in comparison to each other. But it's important to understand this and understand how that works, because otherwise, what would you have it to base off? Nothing. If you haven't done this, if you haven't drawn this sort of thing before, there is just nothing to base this idea or concept off of. So here, by just looking at the back of this guy's hand, I know exactly pretty much the size of what his face is going to be just by doing that. So it's an important observation. And when you look at paintings of the old masters and everyone else, you'll see that a lot. The hands are very expressive. You can make them, exaggerate them, you can make them larger. Jack Davis was great at doing this. When he drew hands, he would make them larger. He would get them more knuckly and more bony. But there was so much character in them. It's one of those important aspects to really do and create that fun within the drawings, and that's what makes them exciting, and the whole picture, because then again you're creating the whole. You're not hiding all these separate little elements within the picture, so keep that in mind as much as you can as well. Now we're looking at the side of the hand. If you just hold it out in front of you, the hand naturally doesn't just stay straight. It's not flat, it's not parallel. There's no parallel lines going on anywhere. It really is a solid shape. You cannot bend that inner part right there. All of that starts to bend and starts to adjust at our knuckles. That all of a sudden becomes the hinge shape within our hand. And that, if you just hold your hand flat, palm in front of you, and bend your hand forward in front of you, if you are waving towards yourself or waving by, turning it the opposite way, you will see how that hinge works. It just goes up and down. It has this up and down movement. You can't move it side to side without moving your whole wrist. You can only move your fingers from side to side because they have this sort of ball joint which gives you that ability to move them up and down from side to side. But notice the first knuckle and second knuckle, you can't move those side to side. Those just act as hinges going up and down. So once again, it becomes this very mechanical function that we have as our hands. Important to understand. Now if I were to take your hand and lay it flat, how far can you bend it up? And look at the arc and sweep that it has. All of a sudden, the bottom of the hand becomes convex in a way. But keep in mind too, when you have that shape and your hand kind of going up, how far can you take that hand up? You cannot do what I just did and take your fingers all the way up unless some people can, but most people can't. But the reality is your knuckles will probably be broken at that point. If you put pressure on your fingers, you can start to push them up a little bit further, but on the actual palm of the hand, then you can just add the fingers to fit almost within those sockets. And then here, as you can see, I've just broken it down real simply into the 1, 2, 3 different parts. Remember where it cuts in half. Always keep that in mind. And that's because right now we're looking at the back of the hand, that it's cut in half. Remember, the palm of the hand isn't cut in half. Your palm is a lot longer. And it's also important, to look at apes and look at, that class, that family, and just see how their hands work and look how it varies from the human hand. So once again, breaking it down into these 3 separate shapes and these 3 separate elements, you'll start to realize that everything is all based on shapes. Everything that you do is based on form. Everything you see has the form. So understanding all this is going to make you a better artist and understand how all these things work, and it's not going to be so complicated. So don't be afraid to draw hands anymore. If there's anything that I can get across to you now, is don't be afraid to draw hands. They're fun to draw, and they're expressive, and they really add to your artwork if you do them. Have you ever noticed when you're about to pick up an object, whether it be paper or a ball, that your hand will almost take the form and shape of whatever it is you're going to pick up? So it's just an interesting observation, but that's what works. So if there's anything around you right now that you want to try to pick up, before you do it, look what shape your hand's about to take. This is something just to keep in mind for if you're drawing a character that's just about to grab something. You may want to think next time about, not if he's going to grab a ball or something, that he doesn't have just one finger sticking out, that all of a sudden he's going to take that sort of shape. His hand is going to take that shape of the ball. If he's going to pick up paper, his hand's going to become flat and almost act as a claw, in a sense, as he's wrapping through things. So these are all, again, the important things to understand, keep in mind, observe, and every day just keep drawing these different hand shapes and do 30-minute exercises. You're not trying to figure out all the detail right now. You're not trying to figure out every single little muscle that's going on in the hand, the whole thing. It's important to understand the anatomy of the skull of the hand. If there's anything I can say, is understand that, learn, get some reference, look at some art books, look how the bones work within the hand. If you have an understanding of that, it's going to help you be able to draw hands in many different positions when you need to. And you always want to start with some form of just rhythmic shape or the action of the hand, whatever it may be that you're trying to do. Once you establish the action of your hand, then you can draw, then you can start to construct it, and then you can start to add the details within the hand. Something that I had learned a long time ago, I think it was Bridgman, I'm not 100% sure if it was, but he had talked about 4 primal uses of drawing of the hand and its function at one point. One of them was to think of the hand as a weapon, and that's what it was used for, and that's also what it is still used for today. Think when you make a fist, what you can do with the fist all of a sudden takes on this sort of weapon for punching and hurting and possibly killing. The next thing, primal instinct with using hands, is a scoop. And also keep in mind that when you think about a baby or a child, they know how to communicate with their hands way before they even understand how to talk or anything else. So it's interesting to observe that they know how to grab things and hold things and scoop things and hook things, whatever it may be. They get it before they can even communicate what it is exactly they're doing. So it is true when you think about all this. So here we have as second primal instinct within using your function of your hand is to use it as a scoop. Think of all the times you've put out your hand for someone to give you either money, you've stuck your hand out to take food, you've held your hand out to take drink, you've cupped them together to take a drink of water and create this suction cup and hold them. If you were to hold sand in your hand, wherever it is, it serves a huge function to be able to use your hand as a scoop. Now the next thing, primal instinct for your hand, was used as a hook. Now you can just hold your hand down and think of all the things you've kind of hooked, that you could create this hook to hold a hanger in your hand or to hold anything else. Or if your kid was holding with one finger onto you, and think of that as whatever it is that you're holding or anything. So it's a pretty interesting concept when you think about it, just these primal uses that we had using our fingers, our hands, and just the ability that when you just take your hand and you just move it around in front of you and you just look at all those different shapes, all those different angles, you could just move it in so many different parts. It is at a first glance an extremely scary thing to just look at as you're doing that, but always look at your hand. If you can't think of anything to draw and you're struggling and go, I don't know what to draw today, just take your hand and start drawing your hand, because this is an exercise and something you're going to be doing for the rest of your life as an artist too, if you're serious. Again, the whole thing about drawing is the discipline. In order to get to a certain level, you have to be disciplined. You have to want to draw. You got to keep it up and keep going. If you don't, you will not succeed, and it's going to take you a lot longer. The next function that was talked about in the fourth one was to use your hand almost as tongs. And when you put your hand in that sort of shape, as the same function as tongs, just look at your ability. Look what you can do. Look what you can pick up. Look what you can grab. Anything using your hand in this device. And I always thought, if dogs, I always thought, man, these guys are so bummed. If only they had thumbs. If only they could do that, because then they'd be able to get their own things. And that's the one thing that a lot of animals, in a sense, are missing. Where primates, very fortunately, we're very extremely closely related, that they have the use of their thumb and ability to hold things and do everything that we do. So again, keep in mind all this sort of stuff. It's extremely important. Don't neglect hands. Draw them every day, whatever it takes, until you get better. Look at a lot of different other artist approaches and never give up. So now that we have a better understanding of drawing real hands, and we've kind of broken down the shapes, where to kind of split the hand in half, where to do all that sort of thing, and know the comparisons and the differences, it becomes a lot easier to start, as I'm drawing this, just breaking out and creating different styles of hands and drawing cartoony hands, and not being so, unknowledgeable about what it is that we need to do. One of the things you need to keep in mind again is this is going to be a never-ending study. I'm not going to be able to draw every single hand there is, for you in this sort of class, but this is where you as a student must take the time to start understanding how to draw the hands in the right way. That way, when you're called upon as a designer in the animation field, or wherever you end up in illustration, or wherever it may be, you'll have that pure understanding of what to actually do and how to do it convincingly, without people constantly saying, you need to draw better hands, because that's always probably what you hear a lot. I know myself, when I look over a lot of different students' portfolios, I feel like I'm constantly telling them, you need to practice your hands, try to get better at drawing them, making them more convincing. Just look through magazines, look through books, look at some of your favorite artists, whatever it takes, learn how to draw hands. As you can see right now, I'm just drawing this a lot more graphically. I've broken my hand, split it into the two halves so that I know the actual size that the hand's going to be. So it's doing all this, and having that understanding is going to make your hands a lot better and stronger. I would advise, definitely, this is something that I do. If you're in life drawing, or outside just drawing in your sketchbook, in the coffee shop, or out to lunch, or wherever you may be, is to just focus on hands sometimes. Don't worry about the rest of the figure. Just focus on that, and you'll start to develop and learn a lot faster as you do it. Try to fill up a page. It's, once again, if you struggle with something, learn to draw it, because a lot of times people, artists, and just in general, I myself at times, you get frustrated with drawing something. You don't feel like you're good enough at drawing something, so you just tend to avoid it. And that you step out, what you need to do is just step out of your comfort zone. Just break out of that zone and say, you know what, I'm going to get better at this. I need to try this, and this is what I'm going to do today. And because it's really going to strengthen your designs, and it's really going to make everything that you do so much better in the long run. And this applies with everything. As I'm going over this and every demonstration I'm giving, every lecture that I'm doing, it's all about understanding the reality of things, how things really work in the real world in existence. Because only once you understand that, it is my true belief that only then can you caricature it, because you understand where to squash, where to stretch, where to make narrower, where to make longer, whatever it may be, small or big. That's when you can do it. So by understanding this and learning how to draw real hand and just learning how real hand works, only then can you start to really have fun and play with it. It's the same if you were going to be drawing an animal or anything else. As I've mentioned before, learn what that animal really looks like before you try to caricature it. It's going to make your life a lot easier. The picture that I just finished drawing with more graphic hand was just a graphic representation almost of the hand that I just drew, which was more of a cartoony, bubbly hand. And it's one of those things where, well, having the understanding you can do that. And there's many different varieties. I could have made the tips round, could have made them square, could have made them pointy. It's up to you. It's however you wish to set the style, however you want to do it, just do it. The hand that I just drew too, you could see that I was just drawing the arc around the fingers and creating that shape. That's very important. If you're, whatever you're drawing, whether you're drawing a hand, whether you're drawing a muzzle, whatever it may be, create the arc, create the shapes, understand where those arcs fall, understand the shape that you're trying to contain your fingers within. If you draw that, all of a sudden it makes your drawing come to life and becomes a lot easier to do. So the more you do that, the more you'll understand. It's very important to also understand perspective, because if you're going to be drawing a hand in any angle, drawing the palm, you need to know within perspective which way that palm is going to be facing. So do that again as much as you can. Try to study that. Now I'm drawing another hand, just blocking in my shapes as I'm drawing this. And sometimes it's just as easy, especially if you've drawn lots of hands, just to just freehand it and just go really loose, really quick, really rhythmical. When you do that, you'll find that you'll create more gesture within the hand too. It's important not to, in a sense, just do teeny little bits of lines and not understand where you're going. It becomes a form of just chicken scratching, and you have no concept, no idea, and nothing's going to come from it. So it's very important, again, just to make sure that you understand what the story is. Just like within character design, when you're about to design something, to be successful with what you want to do, you need to know what it is you want to draw. If you don't know what it is you want to draw, you're going to have artist block. You're going to be confused. You're not going to have fun. You're going to be frustrated. So if you understand what it is that the hand is trying to say, and after making some of these hand gestures yourself, as I've been doing as I'm sitting here drawing, I've just been making these quick little hand gestures, just trying to figure out, what I'm about to draw next. So you need to just do this quickly. You need to understand what it is you're trying to say, and once you understand that, then you can create the life within the hand, because remember, the hand is just as expressive as the face is. If you want to tell the story that you're begging, you can do that with your face, with your eyebrows and everything, and you can also do that with your hands. If you want to convey anger, that's just my natural way of drawing, but I still have that nice circle shape. Oftentimes I won't always follow exactly that circle or square that I make. In my mind, just from doing it so much, I'm just using that as a really quick guide. It just becomes something that is just very, quick and intuitive, and I just do it really fast. I don't try to waste too much time on the whole box at this point, but it's something that I've definitely done in the past. Here I am putting my hand up at sort of like a stop sort of sign, not stop sign, but just trying to give that um, showing my hand as a halt in a sense, just sticking it straight up. I could be telling someone to stop, I could be blocking something from coming towards me, but notice how I've used straights against curves here. Notice how I just haven't made the hand stiff and parallel, and that's why it has a lot more life to it. By drawing that, all of a sudden it takes on this shape of just reality, because that's how your hand's going to look. It's not going to be, you're not drawing a board, it's not a cardboard box or anything like that. You just want to make sure that you really get these sort of angles. Now with this Jordan, they were using three hands to design all the characters, and that worked because the cartoon characters were so cartoony, and they had that sort of real easy, simple feeling, like many of from the Flintstones or any of those other cartoons. It was just very, very cartoony. So also there was a time when they were just using the three fingers, especially in the early days, because it saved time from animating five fingers, when they had the thumb and the three fingers. So there was a reason why they kind of switched to doing three fingers at a certain time. But also you need to keep in mind, you need to make sure that it really works stylistically with what you're doing. If you're going to be drawing characters from, say, some Disney feature movies where the movie is a lot more realistic in a sense, whether say it's Tarzan or say it was Beauty and the Beast, for instance, some of the characters within that show, you need to make sure that the hands fit the style that go with the rest of it. I find if you start to take on human proportions with your characters and you're starting to stay pretty true to those sort of human proportions, then that's going to be the right sort of time to use four fingers. If you're going real cartoony into the SpongeBob realm or anything else like that, and it's real abstract and obscure, that's when it's okay to use three fingers. So just make sure you keep that in mind as you're designing stuff. The last couple hands that I've drawn are just trying to play around with the movement in the fingers. It's very bizarre in a weird way how the fingers can move, but they do work on hinges, and you need to keep that in mind. As one finger is going to overlap the other, is going to overlap the other. The more you think about that and keep that in mind, you won't just have a bunch of stiff hands too. There's a lot of overlap going on that you need to pay close attention to within hand. If it was, I started off with a slight little box shape, if it was coming out maybe in front of you a bit, so take your box, remember, create your palm, and act as if your palm was an actual square, an actual brick is a good thing to maybe think about, and take that brick and start moving it in different directions. And you can do this yourself as just a little fun test, is if you get just a little block or something that's a little bit skinnier and long that takes the form of a brick, just start to move that around on different planes and kind of look at the angles and the shapes it takes. Then you want to think of the fingers as these tubes coming out of that block, and then remember how the hand moves, and just use your own hand to really help you do that. As I'm drawing this fist, and it's kind of, we're looking at it, from the palm side, looking at us, look at the shapes that I'm taking, look at the angles that I'm creating, the arches within the drawing as I'm doing that right now, that sort of flow within the shape as far as the hand moving in space. Once again, I'm not drawing just parallel lines, because that's not how the hand looks. If you just draw these two parallel lines doing something like that, it really doesn't convey believability. You need to look outside of the contour of the shape of the hand. These are very important things to remember, that you make sure that you have the right sort of spacing, the right sort of negative space going on. How can the hands tell a story just within that negative space? So really make sure you pay as much attention to that as possible. A lot of the times in betweening pose and that sort of thing is extremely important to try to do when you're drawing the woman's hand, because otherwise you don't want to get it a big, thick, muscular hand, because all of a sudden you're going to make the woman look just real masculine. So in order to do that, look at magazines, look at these women's hands, look how they sit and rest against things. The great thing to look at is poses of women as they're standing. You often see women when they rest their hands on their hips. How do they do that? How does the hand actually rest on the hips? How does the hand rest when it's sitting on the hip but curled backwards? How does the hand react to all different situations? These are all the sort of things that you constantly need to pay attention to and keep your eye out on. Because if you don't, when you're called or you're trying to come up with a new design and trying to do something, you just won't know what to do. As I'm drawing this hand, I'm just again having it hold something, pretending that I'm holding like a little marble or something, and blocking in the overall shape, blocking in the action. Once we block in the action, then we can start to block in, construct it a bit with more blocks in a sense, and then we can start to add the details if that's what you wish to do. But look at the angles that are going on within this just shape within it. It's great to look at their hands. Look at the way Hirschfeld approached hands. It was such a great way because of how rhythmical they were. It was just pure line, just pure flow, and they were so believable and so great to look at. It's just genius. And then also look at the real cartoony hands. Look at some of those comic strips in the newspaper. Look at the way they approach drawing these real sort of cartoony hands. There was really, a lot of those times those guys have a very limited sense of hand shapes and hand ideas, but they usually stick to a certain amount that kind of get the job done to try to illustrate or show that someone is very expressive with their hands open, their hands are pointing, their hands are picking up something. Keep that in mind. Look at Paul Coker Jr., the way he drew hands. Very just loose and just crazy, but they were just great. Hank Ketchum, Don Flowers, all these sort of guys. Keep your eyes open. Whenever you're looking at someone's stuff that you like, check it out. Try to figure out how they did it. And that's the key. How does someone else do it? Because they've learned from someone else, and they learned from someone else, and they learned from someone else. It's all just this growth and learning, and from one artist to the next, and that's how we learn, and that's how we grow. I started off with as you can see, almost like a soapbox or a brick for this hand as I'm starting to make this fist coming towards us, and this is showing the perspective as it was coming towards us, so you're not going to see so much of the back of the hand. These are the sort of things that are important to remember, and that's why it's important to understand a little bit of perspective. You may think of perspective as just learning how to draw buildings and everything else, and you don't do that, you don't want to do that. Well, I don't do that. I don't do any of that, but I do feel it's extremely important to understand the basics of perspective. So get some books on perspective, just get a quick understanding of how perspective works, and once you have an understanding of that, it's going to make your job a lot easier when you start designing. If you have to draw a hand coming towards you, if you have to draw someone's foot coming towards you, if someone's legs coming towards you, whatever it may be, these are all the sort of things that are going to be affected. Here again for this hand, I've drawn a almost triangular shape, and I want this hand is going to be sitting down holding a pen in their hand. So as I'm drawing this, I'm drawing my flat surface. I'm almost creating this straight against curve where the hand is hitting the table becomes the straight, and then all of a sudden that curve is on top, but I've angled it just to kind of create more of the knuckle within there. As I start to place my knuckles throughout and look at the tapering, how everything's going on. And the only way you're going to get good at this is by copying hands, drawing hands, and the books that are out there, there's a lot of them. Pick them up, draw from them. But the most important thing where you're going to get most of your practice from is drawing not from, say, another artist's work telling you how to approach drawing hands, but by you actually taking the time to observe them and drawing them yourself, because that's the only way you're going to get better. You have to do it. I'm sure today, as you're watching this, there's about 5 magazines somewhere lying around your house. Go through it and just fill up a page of hands, see what you come up with, and have fun, especially while you're watching this, because it's on your mind right now, and this is the sort of thing that you need to do. This is all has to do with inspiration. At this point, I hope I'm inspiring you enough to get you motivated enough to say, I'm going to start drawing hands from now on. I'm not going to fake it anymore. I'm going to start to take my job seriously. And that's what it is. You're taking your job seriously when you start to learn how to draw hands. It's going to just make you a better artist, so just do it. Here I'm just drawing another hand, very rhythmical. The hands kind of spread open a bit. The palms somewhat facing towards us, but it's not a straight on view. Look at the arc and shape. I'm containing my fingers within a shape. It's very important to understand that structure. If you can do that, I'm putting my thumb pad right in the middle, in the center where it actually lies. And because I know how to draw the real hand, I can do this. I can do this, and it makes sense to me, and I understand it. If you don't understand that, draw a shape within a shape. Do you want a triangle within that flat shape? Do you want a square within that flat shape? Do you want an oval? Are the fingertips round? Are you just going to draw a circle within there for a fingernail? Are you going to draw a triangle? Either way, are you going to draw a rectangle, square within that shape? What is it that you're going to do? Once you understand this and just look at a lot of other stuff, then you'll start to come up with your own ideas and see what's sort of working for you. As I'm drawing this hand right here, I'm just making it a little bit longer than normal, but that's fine. This is part of exaggeration. I'm making it a lot skinnier. So do you want the fingers thin? Do you want them fat? How do you want them? So practice, practice, practice. Never give up drawing hands. You'll be doing it the rest of your life. Okay, now we're going to start briefly discussing the features within the face. This is something also where it's very important to start to break down all the different elements and therefore create the whole. If you don't understand how all these different elements work, then it's going to be harder for you once again to caricature it and to push it into any different direction you want. So the first thing I just want to cover is the importance of just breaking down the eye and understanding the eye and the parts of the eye. Once again, if you can just take a day or two just to figure this out and study this, then you're going to better yourself, and that's all you need. And then a constant reminder. Depends how much you're going to keep doing it, but the more you understand this, the better off you're going to be. So as I'm drawing this and going over this, please don't take this for all it's worth. In a sense, I'd much rather you really do some of your own studying and don't just look at this and think you're done studying how the eye works and everything. And that's the same with all the other features. I'm just pretty much just touching on the very surface of it and just trying to give you just the basic understanding and knowledge that I think you should possess in order to make something more convincing as you do it. So the actual eyeball, we know, is really the white of the eye, and that fits within your eye socket within your skull, and that is actually cushioned by a bunch of fatty tissue and fat that kind of lets it sit in there. And as we know, it's almost a sphere, pretty much a sphere in shape, so you can just create a ball. The next part that you have closest to your actual eyeball is the lens. You don't actually see that lens. That's hidden behind your iris and your pupil. Now your iris is the color part of your eye. That's what's going to give you the different variation from hazel to blue to green, etc. The pupil itself, that opening area, is actually an opening and it's black. And that varies in size, and you know how pupils can dilate. They go in and out of when light affects it. And then on top of your eye you have your cornea, which really protects that pupil, the iris, and the lens of your eyeball. So that would usually kind of almost stick out just a little bit within your eye. So it's important to understand this. Now tapping into eyelashes, there's a purpose and a reason for everything. And eyelashes serve as a purpose to protect your eye and to shade it, and also to stop, if you've noticed, if any dust has ever gone on your eye or anything towards your eye, it'll hit your eyelash first and then you'll close your eye automatically. Your eyeball and your eyelids just pretty much act as shutters. It's like it goes up and down, and that's what is really reacting. Your top lid, your lower lid barely moves within your eyes, so keep all that in mind. Also, your eyelashes radiate from the center, and that's where they come out, so it's a good starting point just to kind of draw a shape if you're going to do eyelashes, and then you can draw everything else in between that, so keeping that in mind. As I'm drawing the side view of the eye right now, I just kind of want to demonstrate how the eyeball just pops out just a little, and it's now going to act as an eyelid, as the shutter, and that just rolls right over the ball of your eye, so keep all that in mind. The lower lid, the upper lid, the cheeks, and the brows, they all change the shape of the exposed eyeball, so that's why we can see so much expression within your eyes when you squint, when you open them in fear. Whatever you do with your eye, all these things affect one another. So that's just a brief little lesson on realistic eyes. Let's move on to cartoon eyes. Alright, again, keeping in mind that the lower lid, the upper lid, the cheeks, and the brows, they all change the shape of the exposed eyeball. So the cartoon eyes, they squash and stretch from the same forces. They do the exact same thing. So you need to understand that. So if you understand how a real eyeball works, then it's going to make it that much more easier for you to draw a cartoon eyeball. It can all be very stylistic. There's so many variations of eyeball. Here again, I'm just drawing quickly. I'm just tapping into it. This isn't the end all be all, but just to give you a basis and understanding. Freddie Moore from Disney way back in the day had devised a principle, and he came up with this philosophy that the eyelids and the pupils and the brows all acted from one point. So if you start your point, they'll all base off of that. That way you can contain your whole shape. And it was really a great method of devising something and containing it and unifying it all into one shape. So you can see, as I've just taken that other eyeball, more of the mean eyeball, and this, even though that lighter line and the dotted line I just put in isn't going to be there, it's just acting as an area to where you may put in color. That may be a dark area where you're going to add some shade within your design. So it's important just to have that basic understanding of containing all your shapes into a whole. So keep that in mind every time you're drawing the eye. Practice drawing circles all the time. Practice drawing a circle, practice drawing a circle within a circle, and a circle within a circle. So there you are creating your actual eyeball, you're creating your iris, and you're creating your pupil as you're doing it. Typically, cartoon eyelashes, they vary, depends what you want to do, but the more limited you get with it, the easier it's going to be for other people to animate. So personally, I like to contain my eye shape into just one actual shape with the eyelashes, but sometimes I've added maybe up to 3 or 4 eyelashes. I don't really go anything beyond that. The wrong with the arrows, that's because of the light. When you put the highlights in eyeballs, you need to make sure they're coming from the same direction, because if you put them in two opposite areas, all of a sudden it creates this real weird, just all of a sudden wall-eyed look to your characters. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. Eyeballs vary in shape from ovals to circles to almost square shapes to even just a dot. And keep in mind also, when you're drawing different ethnicities, the eye shape changes. Someone of Asian descent doesn't have necessarily that big of an eyelid. Their lid just tends to fold over their eye. So it's important to understand and look how that works. So always just keep your eye out on different things. The biggest thing to do is to practice from drawing from magazines again. Just look at magazines, because there's a great abundance of models and everything else, or any place, any books, anything you can find. Just look and study the eye and see how it works. One of the best things you can do is look in front of a mirror and start to create all different sort of eye expressions as you're looking, because that's really going to help you again understand from feeling. Because when you feel it, when you really get a grasp and you feel like your eyes are bugged open, you feel your eyes are squinty, you feel your eyes are making evil. So right now, make those faces and feel all the muscles and everything that is changing around your face. Everything affects everything. So always keep that in mind. And when you're drawing caricatures or cartoons, it varies. It's very important. The eyes really define the person in caricature. Make sure you capture that person's eyes, their eye shapes, everything else about them. Otherwise, oftentimes you won't get them. And you've heard that expression a million times, the eyes are the window to the soul. They really are. It's important to take your time on eyes. I know these eyes are rushed here, but make sure that you take your time on doing eyes and focus on the whatever shape you're going to do and define a shape. That's the most important thing you can do, is make sure you just keep defining a shape, defining the shape within your character, and you're going to have a lot more success when drawing your eyes. And also understand that the eyes are the most important part of the expression. They're really going to set and determine the mood, the personality, and the emotion of your character. So you really need to make sure you take as much time as you can on eyes and getting some real strong eyes going. Okay, now I'd like to talk about one of the most unique features on the face, and that's the nose. It's really a wedge shape that comes out from the plane of your face and has so much characteristic and so much personality that it's really an important thing just to observe and understand. The nose can take form in so many different variations. You've seen it from being wide to narrow to long to short, and there's such an abundance of variations it would be impossible for me to really cover every single aspect. But as long as you understand the basis of it and understand that we have the bone within our nose, we have the two frontal nasal bones and 5 cartilages within the nose. Once again, please look at a lot of different books to try to figure out how the nose is actually constructed. This is just giving you a basic idea to kind of tap into it. As I'm drawing here, once again, I'm just starting with another form, just a rectangle shape as I start to build it. Almost on that bottom part right there, it almost looks like a bird in flight. That's how you can kind of think about just breaking down that bottom, that shadow point. But then again, that's because the nose is going in perspective. So the bridge usually tapers. It's usually narrower at the top, and as it goes down, it starts to get even wider at the base of the nose. So look at that, and once again, look at many different magazines, look at a lot of different pictures, look how different artists approach noses, and see what you can learn and see what you can pick up. But it's just having this quick basic understanding which is going to help you when you come to just drawing people in stores, in wherever you are, when if you're at the coffee shop, wherever you are, when you're doing that quick sketching, it's going to be so much more believable because you have that understanding. If you don't give yourself the opportunity to learn and understand this, then your drawings aren't going to be convincing when you draw in your sketchbook or anything else. And then you can invent stuff all the time, and that's the beauty. If you get this memorized, if you understand this, if you've drawn it enough times, and that's how you're going to memorize things, by drawing things over and over again. Once they're memorized within your head, then you can start to create an abundance in shape. So as you can see, the nose has many forms. I mean, it can be pointy at the tip, it can be square, it can be pointed down, it could be a pug nose going up. There's so many different variations, and now with doing that, we can decide whether we want to make it real crooked. How broken do you want to make it? Do you want to make the nose real sort of fat? It doesn't matter. Also, you need to look at kids and how their noses look, how it affects their age, looking at the different shapes and sizes within a kid's nose. So here I am just giving just a real quick brief sort of glimpse into the variations of noses and all different forms and shapes they can take. And once you get that grasp and understand that, then you can have at it. But basically, the most important thing too is make sure there's a consistent form, a consistent shape. Don't be so wish-washy. Make a commitment to whatever it is you're going to do, and then that's when you're going to have the most success. All right, another very expressive feature beyond the eyes is, of course, the mouth. It is capable of just so much expression, so much movement, so it's important to really understand just the basics of how the mouth works. The top lip is usually more angular and flat, and it's broken into three different parts, with the middle part being almost like this central wedge shape. And the bottom lip is broken into two parts, and that's a lot more full and just takes on a lot more shape. We know all lips vary. Some of them can be really thin, some almost non-existent when you look at some people, some very full, some very thick. So you just want to look at the sort of character that you're trying to do. And also it's very important to understand and look at different ethnicities, because lips change within the different ethnicities. So I would suggest to you just to look through magazines again and look at all the different lips and mouths and draw them and understand them. On the side view of the mouth, on an ideal person, the top lip usually jets out a little bit before the bottom lip, so it kind of takes this sort of angle. So it's just important to keep note of that. That can vary, of course, when we see people who have underbites and overbites, because the lips take form around the teeth, and that's how they work. And when you smile, you'll notice that your top lip will just tend to just flatten out just a bit on the top more. Also, it's important to understand how many teeth are in the mouth. If I were to ask you right now how many teeth are in the mouth, you may or may not know, but there's actually 14 on the top row and 14 on the bottom row, and so there's 28. So the top two, you're working from the central incisors, then you have your lateral incisors, then you have what you call your canines, and those are usually the sharper ones. Those are like the third ones in, which help you chew your meat and everything else besides your molars. And then you have your first premolar, your second premolar, and then your first molar, second molar, and your third molar, but that usually gets taken out. That's like your wisdom teeth, so you'll have around 28. But it's important to understand that. Also, these are like quick mouths as I'm drawing them, just to demonstrate to you just understanding. You can either put lines in the teeth or take the lines out of the teeth. Does the person have buck teeth? Do they not have buck teeth? Do they have a gap in their teeth? Do they show gums? For caricatures, it's very important to kind of capture the person's mouth, because it really defines what they look like. Besides their eyes, their mouth is very important. But when you're drawing cartoon characters, you really want to simplify things. So really what I want to try to express to you with this is make sure you define your shapes. What are your shapes of your characters' mouths? Don't make them all wish-washy. Just make a commitment, because that's what's going to make your drawing more believable and more of a solid drawing. But it's important to understand what the real mouth looks like, and then you can interpret cartoon mouth in any way, shape, or form. So practice this as much as you can. And here's another very unique feature that we all have, that's so much variety and so much variation in the form of the ear. When I draw an ear, I always like to think of it in about 5 different planes. So you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth line is representing kind of like the earlobe, number 4 and 5. But splitting it into just these 3 separate sections, you have your earlobe, and then that middle part is actually called the concha, but I just call it the bowl of the ear. And then the top part surrounding the outside of the ear is called the helix. I believe it's the outer helix and the inner helix. But that's technical stuff, but it's one of these things where just understand. I mean, you could learn how to draw ears within a day. Just take the time, just sit and just draw a bunch of ears. Just find some magazines, find some books, whatever it is. Just learn how to draw the ear. And once you have an understanding of that, you don't have to, and the more you draw it, you'll memorize it. And when it's memorized, when you're just loosely sketching or do anything and you want to have something a little bit convincing, you're going to have a decent ear shape. And especially as a caricature artist and doing live caricatures, if you're doing live caricatures in the theme park, wherever else you're going to do it, it's important to, you'll find a stylized ear to probably do, but it's extremely important just to understand what's actually going on in case you need to do that. So learn how to do it, and this is my whole basis on learn the fundamentals. Learn the fundamentals and everything else will follow, and that's what it is. So if you understand this, then you can draw the cartoon ear and do everything no problem. It's important to learn to draw the back of the ear. What does the back of the ear look like? Especially when you come to do turnarounds. You're going to need to draw the side view of an ear. You're going to need to draw a front 3/4 view of an ear. Going to draw a back view of an ear. So it's important to understand all these different variations. Here I'm just doing a bunch of different stylized ears, and once again it is unlimited. This is 5 variations of thousands of different varieties that can happen within the ear. If you're doing a side view ear, same sort of thing. The most important thing, once again, is to make sure that you define a shape. Make sure you make clear as to what that ear shape is, what's going on the inside, and make it consistent. And when you're creating a show and you're stylizing it, that's something you want to keep in mind, is having all the ears create what the inside of the shape of the ear looks like, and keep that consistent throughout the rest of your show. This is all extremely important to do when you're designing and creating the look of a show, is finding that unique actual look that you need, that you can use this for your whole show, and it's going to be consistent and everything's going to be unified, and that's the key. I want to touch now briefly on understanding basic proportions, and this is for the human figure. Now, the human figure is really based on using the different forms we've learned, because you want to start with the basic essentials. We're dealing with all the different cylinders, spheres, squares, all these different elements to build the figure together into the whole. But first of all, understanding the head. The head becomes a unit of measurement for which we base the human body. When you're going to break down your characters, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to say how many heads tall they are by understanding the basic unit of the head. And understanding the head will give you the measurements as far as everything else around. So there's a lot of basic things just to kind of understand or think about as you're drawing the human. This is based on the ideal proportions of a human, which male, which they say is roughly around 8 heads, and that's more of the ideal. Most men are around 7.5 heads, but to simplify it and make it a little bit more unique, it's always kind of based on the 8 head theory. So using the head of measurement, you can start to really break down all the different aspects of the form of the body. You also want to really understand this and break it down again into its simplest form, from understanding the oval, using cylinders for arms, using cylinders for legs. And the more you understand this, then it's going to be easier for you to draw anything. A lot of people get caught up on the clothing and all the features, and they don't understand what's going on underneath with the basic form, and that's where their drawings fall apart. So make sure you're really aware of this. I had mentioned before in a previous class to just look at a Barbie doll, look at a G.I. Joe doll, look at anything like that, and look how it's broken into these basic parts. The torso, the upper torso, is actually the largest part of the body, but we want to break it down into the 10 different parts, because when you think about it, that's all you really need to memorize are the 10 basic parts of the body. That is the head, the neck, the upper torso, the lower torso, the upper arms, the lower arms, the hands, the upper legs, the lower legs, and the feet. So when you break it down into these 10 basic shapes, now you have a better understanding of where to place things. But it's important to understand the real proportions of a human being, because once you understand the real proportions of the human being, then whenever you're drawing your animated character, you'll know where to put their elbow, you'll know where to place their hands, you'll know where to place their knees in relation to everything else. But of course, your character isn't always going to be 8 heads tall. They may be 2 heads tall, they may be 3 heads tall, 5 heads tall, but you want to base your proportions around that same form of measurement. Of course, you may have a larger head, you may have bigger hands, but having an understanding of this, you all of a sudden won't make the elbow come all the way down to their knees unless there's some crazy looking beast or something. You got to realize too that about 90 to 95% of the jobs that you're going to get within this industry as an artist is going to be drawing the human form in some way or in another. you're going to have to do that. And understanding this, you can see how you can break this down into drawing animals and everything else. Just learn the proportions and placement of various animals, from a horse to a dog to a cat to whatever they are, and you'll start to understand how to draw things better, just basing it off drawing these basic forms. So keep this in mind, understand where the placement and everything is within your characters, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. You also got to keep in mind too that the proportions, we know that they're very similar because of the fact that there's so many ready-made clothes for all of us to wear. When we go to the store, then based on certain sizes, we can fit into these clothes, because that's how manufacturers are basing it off the fact that most people are similar in proportion. Of course, you have some unique people who have real various different shapes and sizes which are different from everyone else extremely, and there's these specialty boutique stores for those type of people, but you can also get things hemmed and everything else. So understanding that the waist hits where the elbows are, and that's also where you're going to find the belly button. Understanding that from the halfway point of the human figure is from the top of the head to the pelvic bone. So once you draw that in there, then you can always have a basic understanding of where you're going to fit the rest of the parts. Then the legs, the top of the legs, the upper legs are 2 heads tall, the lower legs are 2 heads tall, and so on. So as you can see, this is real quick, basic, just giving you a basic idea. Study this, learn it, get some better books than what I'm teaching you about this, and learn this, and you'll have a lot of success when it comes time to do it. Okay, now that we've been talking about just the certain features and everything on the face, and understanding a bit about the proportion of the body, I'm going to now go over a bunch of life drawings that I've done and continuously stress the importance of life drawing. It is so important. Life drawing, I may have mentioned, just you learn everything about proportion. You learn about construction. You learn about balance. You learn about rhythm. You learn about lighting. You learn about every single aspect of drawing is all encompassed within drawing the human form. So if you don't draw the human form and take life drawing classes or draw from life, you're cheating yourself out of probably the greatest art education that you can get. And the only way, and I'm going to impart this huge secret on you right now, so be prepared to write this down. There's only one way to get better at drawing, and that is by drawing. It is so important to do it as much as you can if this is what you want to do in your life, if you want to be an artist. So now I want to start just explaining to you a bit about my process and how I go through things when I'm doing them. This is just using a black marker, a pen, that I always like to change up my mediums. I do that because I feel you can become very complacent. If you start just getting used to using a certain type of charcoal pen or a certain type of pencil or anything else, then you start to familiarize yourself too much with it, and that's all you end up using, and you don't give yourself the chance to work on many other variations, and you never know what effect you're going to get. So do this as much as possible. It's important when you go live drawing, if you can, do these quick 30-second drawings, because what's going to happen is it's just going to loosen you up, and it gives you is the understanding of just balance and rhythm and everything else. So you can just kind of see, everything that's kind of just going on within here, within this nice flow and this nice balance of the head and everything else. And it's just real loose, understanding balance, understanding rhythm, understanding form, extremely important. Here's another drawing. Once you understand proportions and where things are, then and only then can you start to caricature it, because then you really understand what the source is, where it's coming from. If you don't have that knowledge, you can get away with cheating stuff and doing things, but it's not going to look as convincing as if you really understand what it is you're doing. What's great about figure drawing is you get so many different poses and just working on faces, but everything that I'm doing and working on, I'm just really looking at the whole overall action, the line of action within that pose. What is this person doing? And it's almost like easier to draw, and now I'm just going to add what I imagine his foot looks like, back there. And I can do that because I understand the form and the structure of everything going on. But just keep in mind looking at the different tilts in what the body makes. When you don't want that, you want to have movement, you want to have life, you want to have energy. So do it as much as you can. Here, using a different technique. The biggest thing is experimentation. The more you experiment, the more freedom you're going to have as an artist to really learn and have fun. So this is just on black paper with just chalk and white colored pencil, but just through these you can almost see I've created a silhouette with them. So this was another form of drawing that you can do, is just to really try to understand where the silhouettes are, where the negative space is, what sort of negative space shape is kind of going within your design. Keep that in mind when you're kind of drawing. Whenever you're drawing in life drawing and drawing people, if you look for this sort of negative space and keep your eye out on that, then that's going to help you with foreshortening and understanding, as it's important to just kind of have an understanding of all this as far as what's going on, your drawing within your sketch, all this sort of stuff. And now here I'm moving on to 2-minute sketches, and this is another important exercise, because what you're doing within the 2-minute sketches, you're just really trying to feel that gesture, within the drawings that I have going. Look at the tilts that are kind of going on within the body. Just extremely important to play with this, understand this, do whatever you can with it, and you're going to keep getting better. So now I can just invent all the time whenever I need to create a pose. You got to keep in mind that you're going to be drawing bodies for the rest of your life. You're going to be called upon as a designer to do this sort of thing constantly. Whatever job you want to do, whether it be book illustration, advertising, anything that you want to do, someone at some point is going to say, hey, we want some characters skateboarding, we want some characters doing this. And if you don't have this knowledge, you're not going to get hired, I guarantee it. So make sure that you really make an effort to do this. These drawings right here are about 5-minute drawings, and this is just taking toned paper and putting some, again, just chalk on it, just different colored chalk on it with charcoal. So experiment, play with it as much as possible, because again, you're going to learn different techniques. Here I just used a toned board and just used pen and ink, just straight with pen and ink, and then put white on top of it just to knock out the highlights and have fun with it. This I just wanted to give just a quick note about, understanding the foreshortening and everything that's going in, as this leg, is really, you got to think of it as this tube, and the direction this leg is coming out towards you, and this leg is back there. So having an understanding of foreshortening and the tubes and everything else within the body and overlaps are so important, not only in character design as you're creating overlaps within your art and your designs, but you're going to get that from understanding drawing the figure. You'll understand how that works, and then as you start to create your own characters, then you'll start creating those sort of so much easier. And again, here's another one, just playing with shadowing, using the same thing on tracing paper, just having fun with it. Here's another one, creating the pose of the woman just on, I was using like a skin tone, like a pinkish chalk. But, all this stuff creates effects, and I don't have that much time. I personally don't like to do studies that are 25-minute, 30-minute, 2 hours long. I mean, I have done that in the past, and I learned a lot from it, but I don't enjoy doing that so much anymore, just because what I do is create characters, and I'm always using body shapes and gestures and everything else. So I'd rather get my training and practice doing that, but I have to know proportions, I have to know construction, I have to know basic anatomy in order to get me there. So here I am, just pushing and pulling a character again, just creating a lot more fun within this character. You'll see what I've done is this character, I've made her a lot cuter from what she looks like which is this model, and I just did another interpretation. And that's the beautiful thing about life drawing is, have fun with it, play. You're not in there to copy the model. Just the most you can. Don't just sit and copy every single little detail. Try to get the essence of what that character's doing, what the basic essence of what they look like. And once you understand that, then you can start really having more fun with your drawings and playing around with it as much as you want. Okay, here's the same arm. It's sort of overlapping over the body, and this body is turned. And as you just kind of draw all these sort of rhythmical shapes within the body, you just create using some straights against curves, having a lot of fun creating a balance, creating design, because that's what you're doing when you're figure drawing. You're creating a lot of design within your sketches. And here's another one, just looking at the way, it's very subtle, but you can just look at this and you can really feel that this hip is just kind of pushed up there, knocking that, and just by adding just that slight tilt to the head, and then you feel like this body is just coming back into here, taking this sort of tilt if it was a box. Just adding these sort of things is just going to really improve your drawing. So keep that in mind. Just draw boxes. One person to study who you'll get a lot out of is Bridgman. So pick up some books on Bridgman and study things about him. When I'm doing these life drawings, what I would do, I'd draw with marker first. And I would draw just the shadow pattern with the marker, and then I went with a brush pen, and it became very spontaneous and very loose. So you can look at the feet. They're not fully detailed, they're not fully rendered, but there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of gesture, there's a lot of life, I feel anyway, within these poses. And it's all the same model, and you can see I've changed her face around a lot too. So experiment. And this is just another guy in the life drawing class. He was real skinny, make him even skinnier. Because he was so skinny, I thought I'd really make his face look scary and doing things like that. But look at the sort of flow and everything that I just kind of have the sort of tilt in this head, this sort of box head. But look at that sort of flow. You can do anything. Here is a drawing. What I would do oftentimes was sit in front of the TV, and it's great with TiVo now. This was just based on when I had a VCR. I would record certain shows, and then I would just sit, and the VCR would last about a minute, 2 minutes. Mine did anyway for the pause button, so it forced me to do these quick sketches. So here I would be watching sumo wrestling on TV and pause it and just have fun and just try to see what I can come up with. So it's a great way to practice. So flip on a sports channel, turn on to a baseball channel, boxing, anything else, and put it on pause, the TV on pause, and make sure that you don't spend too much time drawing it, because you're not going to benefit that way, because you're going to focus too much on the details. And remember, we're dealing with the general to the particular, so focus on that as much as possible. And then just rough out your gestures, rough out your sketches. And it's a great way with sports figures, especially because their bodies are twisting and turning and moving, and there's a lot of stuff going on. This was just watching boxing on TV, doing the same thing, just putting it on pause, just drawing the different poses. Same thing, just using straight pen and ink. Use pen and ink as much as you can too. Don't feel you always need to just use a blue pencil, because by using a pen will create confidence, build your confidence in line. And your drawing is what it is. Just let your whatever mistakes happen and move on. It's not the end of the world. You're not selling these. This is all for practice. This is all to better yourself as a draftsman to get better. This is in a life drawing class too. It was drawing a clothes model, and I'll be discussing this more. Is when you're drawing from books. I have books on drawing with a lot of shots from movies, black and white photography. So just sit and doodle. If you're ever having artist block, or you're not feeling motivated or inspired, just pick up a book and start drawing from that. And when you do that, it'll help loosen you up and just have fun. But I'm able to do all this because I have an understanding of proportion, construction, and what the human figure is all about. And then here's another piece that I've done which was using a live model. He was costumed, and you can just see it's just very rhythmical. I just have a lot of flow. I like to compose my pages, do have smaller characters, larger characters, and just fill up the whole page. But these are real quick gestures. These are probably about a minute long gestures, as I'm just trying to understand how it works. You can almost see, like, even with this character right here from the head, look at this sweeping line that I've just used. That was my first line that I kind of put down to try to understand, who this character was. It's the same with all these when you're trying to figure it out. Look at this sweeping line of action, that's kind of happening within the characters. So keep your eye out on that as much, and practice, and start taking life drawing. Make a commitment to yourself to start taking life drawing once a week. And if you don't know of any place around, try to form a group with some friends to hire a model. There's a lot of agencies. You could call them up and bring a model to your house. I used to do that with a bunch of my friends. We'd hire a model and have her come to the house, and we'd all sit around and draw. Otherwise, draw from TV. Otherwise, do some quick drawings from books. There's no excuse why you shouldn't be life drawing. And I hope that after this lesson today that you're going to be motivated and inspired enough to take life drawing and keep it up for the rest of your life, because it's fun, and you're constantly gonna better yourself when you do it. All right, continuing with the characters that I'm doing from the long voyage home, I've started to rough out my next character real briefly, and that was Cocky. This was the character. Remember, he was the runt of a man with a straggling gray mustache, and all these guys are drunk. But what I want to do right now is, after I've done my thumbnail process and I've done my little tiny silhouettes, those real quick drawings that you saw earlier in a previous lesson, I came up with just some shapes, just trying to figure stuff out. One was, I thought this guy's definitely going to have just, some sort of bit of attitude. And maybe all my guys that I'm drawing tend to be just guys that have been out at sea for a long time, or just they live this sort of lifestyle. They're just maybe get into a lot of fights. They're drunk all the time. They just seem like these sort of characters. So that's what I'm basing it on, giving them little legs, heavier body, big jaw. What I'm doing right now, you can see I've drawn one arm, but this is all my decision process. As I'm drawing, this is my doodling phase. Just trying to think of, when I'm going over it with the black right now real lightly, you can still see that I'm changing things. One of the biggest things you don't want to do when you're trying to come up with an idea and a process is to trace, because that will kill your drawing. That will take away all the life from your drawing. If you put down a line and you stay so true to that, unless it's your really finalized cleanup line, your pencil line that you're going to commit to putting pen and ink over, then you want to make sure that everything's there. But at this phase, I'm still thinking, I'm still designing, I'm still trying to figure out what's going to work and what doesn't work. So by me taking this darker pencil over it, I'm starting to just get a better idea of the silhouette, and making sure I'm avoiding tangents, making sure that all my shapes are kind of working, making sure I have my negative spaces working within the design, making sure my positive space is working within the design. All these things that we've talked about, from balance to proportions, just everything. This is all coming out right now within this drawing, and this is all the stuff that you got to constantly think about and deal with as you're drawing. That's why it's important. Everything I've showed you leads up to being able to do this with confidence and to create the ability and image of the things you want to show. What I'm doing right now, I felt I didn't like that bottle because it was maybe going too parallel with the rest of his body, so I felt I want to change the direction of it, just to kind of give it, just create more of the negative space around it, and just create a little bit of a contrast in angles from everything else that I had. Now this is still just the idea stage. I'm just roughing them out, not sure exactly if this is what I want to go for, this is what I want to do. This happens to be one of the drawings. You also need to understand, as I'm doing this with you guys, this is a process that can take It depends where you're working. If I was working for a feature, this could be something that would take a few months, of just developing and working on hundreds of different characters. When I designed Clerks, when I designed Kim Possible, there are thousands of drawings I had, literally trying to come up with the idea and the look and the different characters and everything else. There's so many, but of course I can't draw thousands, of pictures for this. So this is where I'm just simplifying the process down, just going to show you a few variations. What I would like to see from you is a lot more variation than what I'm doing right now. I'd like to see, at least when you're submitting your page, the fact of the matter is, the more you do, the more feedback you're going to get from me, from understanding if I feel with my eye, if I think you're going in the right direction or wrong direction, or just helping you out with each design as it comes. So that's the real goal here, is to really try to get as much work done as you can. And just I want to show you my process of what I'm dealing with. So when you're drawing these, don't commit. Don't draw this the perfect cleanup line. I've had a lot of students in the past, and they want to just go straight to cleaning it up. They want to go straight to doing these tight drawings, and they want to just, all of a sudden, some people would bring color in, and it's almost like it's too early for that. Don't rush yourself. Don't cheat yourself from the ability just to kind of try to see what ideas you can come up with. This guy's face that I'm drawing right now is actually a character based on my reference page that I had shown you earlier. Was one of the guys in there. I thought he had a unique face. I liked his mustache and his jaw, and he had this, big forehead. So this is just another avenue, another idea. And why I do this in blue right now is just to kind of show you the blue pencil concept, because I can record it on here. It's just getting my underline drawing, and be sloppy with it. Just be quick with it. Don't, sometimes I think, for me anyway, if I think too much and I just don't let myself draw and just let myself come up with an idea and just let something happen, that's when my drawings become really stiff and stagnant, and I lose the life and the energy, and I cheat myself from finding a new way, a new possibility of drawing something, because I like to, well, it's almost like creating these happy mistakes. It's like setting the eyes, setting the mood of the eyes, doing something like that will lead into the something else with the nose. I go, hey, I kind of like the way I drew those eyes, and I see a character in there. So sometimes when you've just established a face shape and you draw eyes, all of a sudden it'll start to develop itself. I don't have all these shapes in my head before I start drawing, because I just don't. I start to find these as I'm drawing it, and this is part of the creative process of doodling and trying to come out with an idea. So I could draw hundreds of pages of these, trying to come up with different shapes, different ideas, and that's really what you want to do ideally. Like I said, in television animation, you don't really have the luxury of doing their budgets are getting smaller. Their time frame is they're trying to speed everything up. You'll usually have about 2 weeks to design a show drawing your characters. It used to be 3 weeks, and now they've really slowed that down a bit to where now it's just taking 2 weeks to do a show. And B, you may have to clean up your own show. Right now I'm working on a show where I have to draw and clean up all my drawings within 2 weeks. So, you need to be fast. You need to be able to make decisions. And that's the key. Feature, you have a lot more time to spend doing things. When I was in Clerks, the animated series, I was doing over 100. I had 2 weeks to design 100 characters per show. So it's you can work at a fast pace. So this is one of the things where this is just to get across to you. Just try to figure things out, have fun with it, see what you can come up with. Don't cheat yourself, and just draw like crazy. Okay, and now we're going to start my final character from the three that I'm doing, and this was Ivan. Ivan was the hulking oaf peasant. He had trouble walking. So, I'm just thinking of this big old hulking oaf. is what I'm just trying to think of. And plus Ivan, I want to kind of give him more character, and based on the story, I assume, it's just kind of more of a Russian sort of character. So these are sort of things that I want to think about. Now, there's certain attributes that I want to consider when drawing, this guy. Not only that is a hulking oaf, that maybe he's going to have a smaller brain and just bigger jaw, so by making his cranium smaller, thereby making him almost look less intelligent. Usually, if you're going to give someone a bigger forehead, bigger European look. So these are the sort of things. What does that entail? Well, for me, when I've just looked at a lot of when I typed in like Russian people and looking at different Russian people, depending on where they're from, it's sometimes the eyes are a little bit further apart within the face, and stronger jawbones, stronger cheekbones, darker eyes. The eyes are just darker underneath it. And this is, of course, right now I'm stereotyping. I mean, this isn't true of all Russian people, of course. It's just, you're just trying to almost condense what you've seen or what I understand about certain people and try and incorporate it in my drawing. So anyway, here's just a couple of different versions as I'm trying to create this guy almost wearing ill-fitting clothes, because that was another characteristic of this guy Ivan. And I'm not so pleased with these sketches, but I didn't want to get rid of them either, because I feel it's important for you to see my bad drawings, to see what I go through, the amount of bad drawings I go through before I get to a good drawing. So, as I'm working on these, I'm not so excited about them, but each drawing I do leads to another idea, and that's the point. You're not going to come up, sometimes you will come up with your idea straight off the bat and it's genius from the get-go. Not me by any means, but other people's work is genius. And then all of a sudden, sometimes it just hits you. So as I started drawing these other ones, my head's spinning, my head's turning, and then I just started to get this idea in my head of this guy that I'm drawing now, and I just wanted to create the whole body, but I wouldn't have got there if I didn't do these other three drawings beforehand. And I can say this now because I've pre-drawn this and I'm recording my voice over this now because I've sped it up a bit. So I could say that I was happy with what this drawing ended, where it ended up going, because it's just one of those things where sometimes it'll take you 100 drawings to get there, sometimes it'll take you 2 drawings to get there, sometimes you'll hit it right off the bat. Of course, I'm basing my features and changing them from my other 2 characters. My other 2 characters are the smaller runt of the guy, and then we got Driscoll, who's the real tall buff guy, strong Irish guy. So I wanted this guy to almost be very circular and very rounded, because my other character, I'd say Driscoll, is more triangular in shape, Cocky is more square in shape, and this guy I'm going to get just more round in shape. So here I am just playing around with all the different parts, the variation in parts and everything. I'm just going from small to big, kind of creating this sense of rhythm within my design as I'm drawing it. So that's an important thing as I'm dealing with that, in creating the rhythm, and we'll touch on that in another class. But it's just, that's what I'm kind of looking for right now. And here I am just trying to feel everything still. This is all part of the sketching out, but also maintaining a balance. You want to make sure that you have the right balance within your drawings, and that your guy doesn't feel all lopsided and is about to tip over. So underneath all this, I have a understanding of the construction. You didn't see me draw the little circle for the ball of the head and the ball, of the body, and breaking down like that, because I've done it so many times. But this is where you're going to get to once you've done that enough times. It's because I understand it. I understand how the human head works. I understand how the hands work. I understand these 10 parts of the human figure that I discussed earlier with proportions, and now I'm just using a different type of character. And I thought, it'd be funny. I'm going to give this guy a tank top now. That's why I erased before. I thought it would be funnier to kind of do that. Have him just have a bunch of hair all over him, just his hair just all over the place. and I just went in with a little darker blue now just to kind of hit up where I want to go. So this was my next character, Ivan, that I'll eventually be developing all the way through and doing a cleanup. So I'm going to do a cleanup on one of these guys just to show you. I'm not sure which one yet, but we'll see what happens. So keep drawing and have fun.